Hello everybody.
Good
Yes.
morning, ma'am.
Good morning. For the today's class, we are going to discuss about the lymphoid organs, lymphoid system. Okay. These lymph nodes, thymus, spleen and tonsil are the lymphoid system or are the lymphoid organs. Okay. Now, lymphoid system constitute the lymphatic vessels and the lymphoid organs. Okay. You understood?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
The lymphatic vessels now. The lymphatic vessels, when the circulating blood reaches the capillaries, this red and blue color are the capillaries, okay, it present in the tissue, okay. When the circulating blood reaches the capillaries, most of the fluid contents passes into the surrounding tissue, okay. Then some of the fluid contents enters back into the capillaries through a venous at the venous ends, okay, of the capillary, and then some of the other fluid contents from the surrounding tissue or the interstitial tissue we called it enters the circulatory system by a separate system, okay. It enters back into the circulation by a separating system, that is a lymphatic system, lymphatic vessels, okay. The lymphatic vessels, it forms as a network like as of the capillary. Lymphatic vessels, it begins blindly in tissues where they form a network, okay. It has higher permeability, and the fluid passing through these lymphatic vessels is known as a lymph. The most chief cells which are present in the lymph are the lymphocytes. You understood? And then
Yes, ma'am.
you can see here, for example, these lymphatic vessels these are the lymph nodes, right? It is joined by the lymphatic vessels. From one node to the other node, it joins by a lymphatic vessels, okay, and it drains upwards, okay, the same direction as of the venous blood. It drains upward into the heart through the subclavian vein at this region, at the junction of the interjugular vein and the subclavian vein, okay. On the left side, the lymphatic vessels will drain into the thoracic duct, which is the largest lymphatic vessels in the body, okay. On the left side, it drains into the thoracic duct, whereas on the right side, it drains into the thoracic duct, okay. Both this thoracic duct and the right lymphatic ducts drains all the lymph fluid into the subclavian vein. You understood, right? Then we are coming to the lymphatic tissue, which is one of the component of the lymphoid system, okay. What is lymphatic tissue? Lymphatic tissue is a group of cells like of lymphocytes and the organ which are involved in the protection of the body's surface like the skin and internal environments like the intestine or the esophagus or the stomach or the lung or the limbs, okay, the lower limbs, the muscles and all, or and the pelvic cavity. We have two different types of the lymphoid organs. One is the primary lymphoid organs and another one is a secondary lymphoid organs. Primary lymphoid organs are the organs which are producing the T and B lymphocytes, and also maturation occurs in this organ. When a production and the maturation of T and B lymphocytes takes place in a particular organ, this is known as a primary lymphoid organs. The example of the organ which belongs to the primary lymphoid organs are the thymus, the blood, the bone marrow, because the thymus and the bone marrow produce and maturate the T and B lymphocytes. Therefore, it is known as the primary lymphoid organs. What is secondary lymphoid organs? The lymphoid organs where the lymphocytes reacts with the antigens and a particular group of the lymphocytes proliferate. Okay, these are known as lymphoid organs. A lymphoid organs where the lymphocytes present inside it react with any antigens, okay, especially with the external antigens, and some of the lymphocytes will be proliferated. This type of organ is known as a secondary lymphoid organ. The examples for the secondary lymphoid organs are the spleen, lymph node, tonsils, etc. Lymph nodes. You see, we have a group of lymph nodes at the pelvic region. This is known as iliac lymph nodes. Okay, there are some lymph nodes in the inguinal regions. It is called inguinal lymph nodes, and then some group of lymph nodes in the axilla region is known as axillary lymph nodes, and some of the lymph nodes which are present in the cervical region is known as cervical lymph nodes. Okay, what is lymph nodes? Now we are discussing about the general features of the single lymph nodes. How does it look like? Okay, they are a small mass. Lymph nodes are a small mass. When I say lymph node means only one, is a small mass of a lymphatic tissue along the course of the lymphatic vessels. You see, each lymph nodes communicate with the adjacent lymph node by a lymphatic vessels in a particular regions, and the fluid inside this lymphatic system, in this lymphatic vessels, is known as lymph, right? So the lymph which drains from any region of the body, like from the iliac, inguinal, axillary, cervical, this lymph from this particular region, they pass different stages, different group of lymph nodes, okay, and they drains different groups of lymph nodes before reaching the circulatory system into the bloodstream at the subclavian vein. Okay, what is the function of this each lymph node? Each lymph node will act as a filters to remove the bacteria and some particulate matters from the lymph. Okay, so each lymph node has a specific area of drainage. This means that lymph nodes of the iliac region, lymph node of the inguinal region, lymph node of axillary region, or lymph node of the cervical region. Okay, what are the external features of the external structures of each lymph node? Now we can see a lymph node, the shape of the lymph node is bean shape, isn't it? And the concavity of the lymph nodes, okay, known as a hilum. Okay, through this hilum the vessels enters, like artery will enter from the hilum, and the veins will exit or will leave the hilum of the lymph node. Okay, that is a universal law of the blood circulation. Okay, several lymph vessels will enter the node at its convex surface. You see, these are the lymphatic vessels. Like you here, they communicate with each other. See this lymph node and this another lymph nodes. They communicate each other. So these are the afferent, A-F-F-E-R-E-N-T. Okay, these are the afferent vessels of the lymphatics. Okay, they enter the direction of the lymph, it's towards the lymph nodes. Okay, the lymphs enter the lymph nodes at the convex surface of the lymph nodes. Okay, and a single lymph, only a single lymph vessel exit through the hilum of the lymph nodes. Okay, and then it subsequently communicate with the other lymph nodes. Okay, this is a schematic diagram of the lymph nodes, okay, about the internal structure of the lymph nodes. It has a capsule, okay, then a trabeculae, then we have, these are the afferent vessels, then below the capsule we have a subcapsular sinus, okay, then this is the cortex, okay, and below each of these trabecula it is a medulla, okay, and the region between the cortex and the medulla is known as a paracortex, okay. Then the afferent, the lymph vessel which exit the lymph node at the hilum is known as the afferent lymph vessels, okay. We can see now the microscopic features of the lymph nodes. The lymph nodes, each lymph node will be covered by a capsule. See this red pink stain at the outer surface of the lymph nodes. These are the cortex. These are the capsule. It covers the lymph nodes. Let's see now what is capsule is. Capsule consists mainly of collagen fibers and some of elastic fibers and smooth muscle. Collagen fibers, elastic fibers and smooth muscle, okay. Now we can see where is the second one. We can see subcapsular sinus. It present below the, it is a potential space below the capsule. Below the capsule, subcapsular sinus is present, like here, okay. Then the cortex. You see this region where the bluish color at the peripheral region of the lymph nodes, these are the cortex, okay. Then the medulla, it present at the middle part. It is centrally located, medulla, okay. And the region between the cortex and the medulla, this is known as paracortex. Now we can see what cortex is. Cortex is the outer zone, okay. It contains densely packed lymphocytes. Remember, lymphocytes are the chiefly cells present in the lymphoid organs, okay. These are the lymphocytes. They are present as a densely packed. They are densely packed lymphocytes and form as a lymphatic nodules. It is darkly stained. Why it is darkly stained? Because due to the presence of the lymphocytes, okay. Lymphocytes will have a nucleus, and inside a nucleus we have a chromosome, and this chromosome will be stained bluish in color, okay. Because it is bluish in color means hematoxylin. It's not eosin. Eosin, it is stained pink, okay. Hematoxylin, it is stained purplish in color, okay. And eosin is acidic, whereas hematoxylin is the basic dye, okay. So due to the presence of the lymphocytes at the cortex, so it is formed a bluish in color. This cortex does not extend into the hilum. You see the cortex, this is the extending portion of the cortex into the lymph node substance, okay. It extends inwards but not to the hilum, okay. It just terminates at this region, at the paracortex region. Several rounded areas are lymphatic follicles or nodules. These are rounded areas of lymphocytes. These are known as lymphatic nodules, okay. These are the lymphatic nodules. It is formed by aggregations of the lymphocytes. Now what is germinal center? Germinal center, this is the one. It's lightly stained, okay. In the middle of each lymphatic nodules there is a lightly stain. It is known as a lymphatic. It is known as a germinal centers of a lymphatic nodules, okay. Lightly stained of the lymphatic nodules is a germinal center. They contain immature proliferating lymphocytes. Or when we say immature lymphocyte, it is the another name of the lymphoblast. Blast, it means immature. Okay, blast, it means immature. So in the germinal center, immature proliferating lymphocytes or the lymphoblast is present. Okay, it indicates that the nodule is responding to the antigen. You understood, right? So therefore, proliferating lymphocytes is present in the germinal center. Therefore, it is known as a secondary organ, secondary lymphoid organs. What a mantle zone or coronal zone is? It is encircle the germinal center and contain small lymphocytes. This more bluish color. These are the mantle zone or the coronal zone. Okay. Now we are coming to the medulla. It means this portion, the central part of the lymph nodes is a medulla. Okay. Medulla is the innermost layer of the lymph nodes. Okay. It is surrounded by the cortex, that is by the lymphatic nodules. Okay. It is lightly stained and contains only few lymphocytes. The lymphocytes in the cortex, they are numerous. Okay, therefore it is bluish in color, right? Whereas the lymphocytes present in the medulla there are only small amount of the lymphocyte in the medulla. Therefore, most of the areas stain pink color. Okay, less purplish color. Lymphocytes are arranged in the form of branching and anastomosing are called medullary cords. You see here the lymphocytes in the medulla region, they arrange as a cord. Okay, they arrange as a cord, like a string of cord. Okay, like this. Whereas in the cortex, the lymphocytes, they aggregate all together. They form a big aggregation, so it forms as a lymphatic nodules. Whereas in the medulla, the lymphocytes arrange as a cord, and therefore it is known as a medullary cord. And between the cord, we have a medullary sinus. These are between the cord. You see, these are the cord, these are the cord, these are the cord, and the spaces between the medullary cords are the dilated vessels. Okay, they are the dilated vessels, and therefore it is known as medullary sinus. Medullary sinuses. Medullary cords contain mainly B lymphocytes, macrophages, dendritic cells, and plasma cells. Okay, trabecula is a septation which extends from the capsule into the node. You see here. Trabeculae is a septations. Okay, is a septa which extends from the capsule into the node substance. And there are some blood vessels also present inside the trabeculae. Okay, these are known as trabecular blood vessels. Okay, hilum is occupied by a mass of a fibrous tissue. Efferent lymph vessels leaves the node from the hilum. You see, there is no extension of this trabecula. You see, this trabecula is stained pinkish in color, and it is also contain blood vessels inside it. And these trabecula never extend into the hilum. Okay, it just terminates at the paracortical zone where the medulla and the cortex are separated. What is primary nodule or primary follicle? Some of the lymphatic nodules which has no germinal center is known as a primary nodules. Okay, whereas a secondary nodule are those lymphatic vessels which has a germinal center. Circulation of lymph nodes. You can see the circulation here. The blood vessels, the artery leaves from the enters from the hilum, right? Whereas the vein exit from the hilum. Now the lymphatic, the afferent lymphatics. This is the one from here. This is the circulation of the lymph fluid, okay? It enters the node through the afferent lymphatics, right? Then from the afferent lymphatics, then it travels through the subcapsular sinus, right? Then it enters again into the adjacent to the trabecula. This is known as a trabecular sinus, okay? Then it reaches to the medullary sinus, okay? These are the medullary sinus which are present in between the medullary cord. Remember that? And then all these sinuses join together and form one vessel, efferent lymph vessels, to exit from the lymph nodes. This is the blood supply of the lymph nodes. Arteries enters the lymph nodes at the hilum, okay, and it passes through the medulla. You see, this is the medullary portion of the medulla portion of the lymph nodes. It enters through the hilum and reach the medulla. It also reach to the cortex, where it ends as arterioles, okay, and a capillaries, okay. Then the arterioles and capillaries arrange as a loop at the cortex, okay, and then subsequently drain into the venule. Arterioles means the ending portion of the artery which is about to form a capillary network, okay, whereas a venous is the terminal end of the capillary. Arterioles is the beginning portion of the capillary. Venous is the terminal end of the capillaries. Where at this region, at the capillary zone, most of the blood circulation will transudate outside, will pass outside the bloodstream and enters the surrounding tissues as a tissue fluid, okay. Then some of this tissue fluid will enters back into the bloodstream, okay. It returns back into the circulation at this junction, at a venule junction. And some of the lymph, okay, some of the tissue fluid enters the lymphatic system by a lymphatic vessels, okay. This is the circulation, this is the blood supply of the lymph nodes, and it drains back into the afferent lymph vein, okay. What is high endothelial venules? High endothelial venules are a post-capillary venules around here. Post means after, capillary means after the capillary venule. The venule after the capillary. This is post-capillary venules in the lymph nodes. They are lined by a cuboidal endothelium. That's what it is known as a high endothelial venules, okay. It allows the passage of lymphocytes between the bloodstream and surrounding tissues. You remember the lymphocytes are the chief cells of the lymphatic system, right? So at this high endothelial venules, the lymphocytes will enter the lymphatic system. This is high endothelial venules. Then what are the functions of the lymph nodes? Lymph nodes are the center of lymphocytes production. That is WBC, okay? Both B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes are produced here, okay, by multiplication of pre-existing lymphocytes. You see, the lymphocytes, travels from the bloodstream, right? And it passes into the surrounding tissue, and then some part of the tissue fluid, it enters the circulation by a separating system, that is a lymphatic vessels. Okay, and these lymphocytes, both B lymphocytes, these are the pre-existing lymphocyte. This pre-existing lymphocyte will automatically produce to increase in number by multiplication, okay, inside the lymphatic vessels. These lymphocytes pass into the lymph and thus reach the bloodstream by a thoracic duct and a right lymphatic ducts. These are the largest lymphatic vessels in the body. The bacteria and the particulate matter are removed from the lymph by macrophages through a process of phagocytosis. This is known as a immune response. The plasma cells is a fully matured B lymphocytes. The immature is lymphoblasts. Remember, immature lymphocytes are the lymphoblasts, whereas the fully matured lymphocytes are the plasma cells. Only the B cells, B lymphocytes are the plasma cells. Fully matured B lymphocytes are the plasma cells. These plasma cells will produce antibody against the invading antigens, whereas these T lymphocytes will attack the cells that are foreign to the body host. Okay, T lymphocytes attacks the foreign antigens, whereas B lymphocytes will produce the antibodies. Okay, thymus, next lymphoid organ we are coming to is a thymus. Thymus is a primary lymphoid organ, right? Because it helps in the production and maturation of the B lymphocytes and the T lymphocytes. It is located in the mediastinum, okay, posterior to the sternum. It presents behind the sternum. It consists the right lobe and the left lobe and join each other by a fibrous tissue. It is known as a primary lymphoid organ along because it produces lymphocyte along with the bone marrow. It is performing an important role early in childhood in developing the immune system. The thymus in adult, it becomes atrophied. Okay, it's hardly to be palpated. It is hardly to be found in the body of a cadavers also, because it is atrophied as ages increased. As the age increased, it atrophied. It becomes small. It regressed. Okay, in development. So it has main role functions in the childhood. Okay, to develop the immune system. This is a microscopic or histology of a thymus. You see, we have a cortex again, trabeculae or capsule, trabeculae, then the cortex, medulla, then blood vessels inside the trabeculae. Then we have the most characteristic feature of the thymus is Hassel's corpuscles, or also known as thymic corpuscles, and adipose cells. These adipose cells, it shows that this lymphocyte is going on the regression stage. Okay, it's about to become atrophied. You see this medulla of this region and this medulla, it continues each other with each lobule, right? This trabecula, some part of the trabecula will divide the lobe into a lobule, right? And some part of the trabecula, it is incomplete to divide the lobule. So there is a chance for a medulla to communicate with the other lobules, okay, with the adjacent lobule. In the central part of the medulla, we saw these corpuscles. These are the epithelioid cells. Okay, this portion here is a lobule. The whole thing is a lobe. Okay, it's a thymic lobe. But in cross section, when we do a cross section and see in a microscope stained with hematoxylin H and E stain, then we can see, because of the presence of the trabecula, it forms into a lobule. From nodes into a lobule, it forms by a trabeculae. And some part it is incompletely separated. The lobule is incompletely separated. It is already formed as a lobule, but it is incompletely separated by a trabecula. Microscopic structure of the thymus. Each lobe enclosed by a connective tissue capsule. This is a lobe, right? This whole thing in here is a lobe, right? And it is enclosed by a capsule peripherally. Okay? And the septa arising from the capsule, passing inward and incompletely subdivided the lobe into lobules. This septa is known as a trabeculae. This one. Arising from the capsule, inward the tissue substance of the thymus and separate the lobe into a lobule incompletely. Each lobule, dark stain, consists of dark stained outer cortex and light stained inner medulla. Each lobule has a cortex, the bluish in color cortex, and centrally is a medulla. The cortex contains densely packed lymphocytes that do not form lymphatic nodules. Remember, in a thymus organ, in a thymus gland, we have no lymphatic nodules. Instead, we have a lobules. Okay, it consists of a cortex, bluish in color, because due to the presence of abundant numbers of the lymphocytes. Okay, same thing in the medulla, less amount of the lymphocytes. Medulla contains fewer lymphocytes but more epithelial reticular cells. Okay, these epithelial reticular cells will support the lymphocytes inside it. Okay, most characteristic feature of thymus gland is the presence of the thymic or hustle corpuscles in the medulla. The most characteristic features of a thymus gland is due to the presence of the hustle corpuscles. Okay, because the lobules are incomplete, the medulla shows continuity between the neighboring lobules. This is the portion. Because the lobule is incompletely separated by a septa, so the medulla region of each lobule of the neighboring lobules will continue each other. Blood vessels pass into the thymus gland via connective tissue capsule and the trabeculae. See, these are the blood vessels, right? This one. So it's present inside the capsule and the trabeculae. Adipose tissue's accumulation shows a sign of involution of the thymus associated with aging. Remember, regression of the thymus starts at puberty. Okay, during childhood it is very active. Then at puberty stages it starts to regress, and some adipose tissue will form inside the thymus gland, and this shows a sign that a thymus gland is started to be erupted. Okay, because of the increase of age. Lymphocytes of the thymus, also known as thymocytes. Okay, lymphocytes, it's formed from the bone marrow and travels into the thymus. Therefore, the bone marrow and a thymus are known as a primary lymphoid organ. In the thymus, these lymphocytes lie in the superficial part of the cortex. These lymphocytes lies in the superficial part of the cortex. As thymocytes divide, they pass deeper into the cortex and to the medulla. You see, when the lymphocytes dividing at this cortical regions, then those lymphocytes will pass through into the medullary towards the medulla. in between the cortex and the medulla. Okay. In the medulla, thymocytes or lymphocytes are fewer in number, but epithelial reticulum is more obvious. You see, these are the epithelial reticulum or epithelial reticular cells. Okay. Only few lymphocytes. That's what it is. Appeared as pink color and less purplish. Ultimately, these lymphocytes will leave the thymus by passing into the blood vessels and lymphatics. The blood vessels or the lymphocytes will leave the thymus gland by passing into the blood vessels, okay, and the lymphatics. Lymphatic nodules are not present in the normal thymus. Remember, this is an important point. Lymphatic nodules are not present in the normal thymus. Instead, we have a lobule, okay? A lobe which is separated, which is incompletely separated into a lobule. This is a thymus gland. At a higher magnification view, we can see the Husserl's corpuscles, okay? These are the epitheliocytes, okay? Let us see now. What are epithelio-reticular cells? Okay, epithelio-reticular cells, also known as epitheliocytes, right? It is derived from the endoderm lining, the third pharyngeal pouch. There are 6 types: type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4, type 5, type 6. Husserl's corpuscles is a type 6 epithelio-reticular cells or epitheliocytes. Husserl's corpuscles is a type 6 epitheliocytes. The type 1, it covered the internal surface of the capsule, the surfaces of the septa, and the surfaces of the blood vessels. We can see at this picture again. There are some epitheliocytes are present beneath the capsule, okay, and in the internal surface of the capsule of the septa, okay. And these epitheliocytes, which are present in the capsule, in the septa and blood vessel internal surfaces, they form as a blood thymus barrier. This blood thymus barrier, which formed by epitheliocytes at this region, they prevent the antigen from reaching the thymus gland. Okay, there are star-shaped. Type 2 are star-shaped epitheliocytes with a prominent nucleus, and it present in the outer cortex. They are also known as thymic nurse cells because they destroy the lymphocytes that react against self-antigens. These type 2 epitheliocytes is star-shaped and also known as thymic nurse cells because they destroy the lymphocytes which are attacking or destroying the self-antigen. The type 3 present in the inner cortex, inner part of the cortex. Type 2 is present at the outer cortex, okay, outer cortex of the lobule, and the type 3 present in the inner part of the cortex at this region, near to the medulla. Type 4 lie in the deepest part of the cortex and also in the medulla. Okay, they form a barrier between the cortex and the medulla. The type 6, it's darkly stained nucleus and it provides a framework in the medulla. Type 5 and type 6 are present in the medulla. Okay, type 2 at the outer cortex, type 3 in the inner surface cortex, and type 4 in between the medulla and the cortex, and type 1 is just below the capsule, internal surface of the capsule, then the septa and the blood vessels. What is Husserl's corpuscles? This is Husserl's corpuscles, okay? It is a round or spherical aggregations of flattened epithelial cells. It's hole-like shape, okay? It exhibits calcification or degeneration centers that stained pink or eosinophilic. They are the type 6 epitheliocytes. The functions are not clear, okay? According to the research and the studies till now, the functions are not clear of this It is the most characteristic feature of the thymus cells, but the functions, it is not clear till now. The studies is still going on. Okay, the functions of the thymus cells, thymus gland. The thymus gland, okay, the functions of the whole thymus gland, it promotes the development of the lymphocyte. Therefore, it is known as a primary lymphoid organ. Okay, it recognizes and responds to antigen. And remember, in the primary lymphoid organ also will react with the antigen. In the primary lymphoid organ also, the lymphocytes will react with the antigen. The thymus gland will produce the thymulin, thymopoietin. These are the hormones, okay? Thymosin, thymosin alpha 1, thymosin alpha 4, and thymic humoral factors. They have different functions. Like this thymopoietin, this one will stimulate the lymphocytes to proliferate, okay? To produce more in number, okay? Like that. They have different functions. Now the next lymphoid organ, we are coming to spleen. Okay, we finished the lymph node, the thymus, and the spleen. Where is the spleen located? It is located in the upper left quadrant. This is the upper left quadrant. This is the upper right quadrant. This is the lower right quadrant, and this is the lower left quadrant. So the spleen is located in the upper left quadrant of the abdomen. Okay, just below the diaphragm, okay, and some ribs, and it is covered by a peritoneum. Okay, it's present inside the peritoneal cavity, and it is also known as a intraperitoneal organ because it's present inside the peritoneal cavity. Okay, the spleen is the largest lymphoid organs, okay, in the body, whereas a thoracic ducts and a right lymphatic ducts are the largest lymphatic vessels of the body. Okay, the function of spleen, it is a blood forming organ during fetal life, intrauterine life. The spleen acts as a center to produce blood. Okay, whereas in postnatal life, that is after birth, postnatal life means after birth, the spleen acts to destroy the blood vessels, the blood cells, okay, like the RBCs. They act to destroy the old age RBC, okay. When the RBC finish their lifespan, so it is removed by the spleen, okay. Therefore, the spleen is known as a graveyard of RBCs. It is an intraperitoneal organ because it's present inside the peritoneal cavity, and it is entirely covered by the peritoneum. Peritoneum, also known as a serous coat, and except at the hilum portion, it is not covered by a peritoneum. Structures connective tissue framework. Deep to the serous layer, deep below at this convex surface of the spleen, it is covered by a peritoneum, right? And below the peritoneum, the spleen covered by a capsule. Okay, always it has a capsule, all these organs. It covered by a capsule. And the trabeculae, the same thing, which extend from the capsule. Okay, it extends into the spleen and form a network. The main trabeculae enters the spleen at the hilus. Remember, the trabeculae in the lymph nodes does not extend into the hilum, whereas in the spleen, the trabeculae will enter the spleen. The main trabeculae, only the main trabeculae will enter the spleen at the hilus. Some trabeculae enters the spleen from the cortex part, not from the hilum. And trabecular arteries and veins are present within the trabeculae. The parenchyma of the spleen consists of a white pulp and a red pulp. The white pulp is the rounded area. Okay, this is the white pulp. Purplish in color is white pulp. its rounded area. Why it is called pulp? Because due to the presence, why it is called white? It is because due to the presence of the WBC, right? The lymphocytes. Therefore, it is known as a white pulp. Red pulp. Red pulp is the red matrix. This surrounding, which red matrix around the white pulp is the red pulp. Okay, remember this spleen does not exhibit any cortex and medulla. Okay, it contains only the white pulp and the red pulp. What is white pulp? White pulp is a lymphatic nodules. Okay, white pulp is a lymphatic nodules due to the presence of the aggregations of the lymphocytes. Okay, in H&E staining, white pulp appears basophilic, okay, not eosinophilic. It is basophilic because it is staining purplish. Okay, within the white pulp there are two characteristic features. We can see a germinal center and a central artery, like here. This is the spleen. Okay, it shows this is the white pulp. The white pulp have a germinal center and a central artery. Okay, even though if this artery is present at the peripheral region of the white pulp, but still it is known as a central artery. Germinal center is slightly stained. It is the area where the B lymphocytes are dividing. Okay, central artery is a branch of a splenic artery. The central artery is a branch of the splenic artery. Okay, and lymphocytes aggregation around the central artery constitute a periarterial lymphatic sheaths. Okay, the lymphocytes, these lymphocytes which are surrounding the artery, the central artery, is known as pulse, periarterial lymphatic sheaths. Okay, these are made up of, these are the T lymphocytes, whereas the lymphocytes present in the germinal center are the B lymphocytes. In the pulse, we have a T lymphocytes. Red pulp. Now what is red pulp? Red pulp, we can see red pulp, we have a splenic cord, venous sinuses and pulp arteries. What are the splenic cord? You see this red area, these are the blood cells. Okay, these are the blood cells, the RBC, these are the RBCs, it's red in color. These are the venous sinuses. So in between the splenic cord, it's present a venous sinuses, like medullary sinus. It's present in between the medullary cord. So in splenic, in a spleen we have a splenic cord. In between the splenic cord we have a venous sinuses or a splenic sinusoids. Okay. Pulp artery is a branch of a central artery, and a central artery is a branch of a splenic artery. Okay, these pulp arteries and leaves the lymphatic nodules. It is named pulp artery is after it leaves the lymphatic nodules. It is known as a pulp arteries. Okay, marginal zone. These are the zone between the red pulp and the white pulp. Okay, functions of the spleen. It is the center for the B and T lymphocytes multiply. Okay, and plays an important role in immune system. Its functions to destroy the old age RBC, and in fetal life it is the center of the blood cell production. What is tonsils? Tonsils is a collection of lymphoid tissues, okay, that are present in the junction of the oral cavity and the pharynx, and therefore it is commonly referred, therefore they are referred to as tonsils. Okay, a lymphoid tissue which are present in the oral cavity and the pharynx are known as a tonsils. Okay, tonsils are present on either side of the oropharyngeal isthmus, is known as palatine tonsil. Okay, you see these are the tonsils. Okay, this lingual tonsils, it's this one, at the dorsum is present on the dorsum posterior part of the tongue. Okay, these palatine tonsils are present in the lateral wall of each oral cavity. Okay, tubal tonsils are present around the Eustachian tube opening or the auditory tube opening, the tube which is open into the nasopharynx, and the pharyngeal tonsil is present in the pharynx, in the posterior wall of the pharynx. Okay, it is also known as adenoid. Okay, and altogether these tonsils, lingual anteriorly, pharyngeal posteriorly, this is lingual anteriorly, pharyngeal tonsils posteriorly, and these palatine tonsils present laterally, and this tubal in between the pharyngeal and palatine tonsil at the Eustachian tube opening. This altogether forms as a ring. This is known as a Waldeus ring. Okay. Palatine tonsils are those tonsils which are present in the oropharyngeal isthmus, and the pharyngeal tonsils, remember, in the posterior wall of the pharynx, a collective tissue known as a collective lymphoid tissue known as a pharyngeal tonsil, and those lymphatic tissue which are present on the dorsum of the posterior part of the tongue is known as the lingual tonsils, and the lymphoid tissue which are present around the opening of the Eustachian tubes are known as tubal tonsils. Okay, and palatine tonsils, it's most commonly known as a tonsil. This is the schematic diagram of the palatine tonsil. Okay, this is the tongue. Remember, when you open your mouth, this is the tongue. Okay, at the inferior upper there is a soft palate. Okay, this is a palatine tonsil. Okay, these are the lateral wall of the mouth of the oral cavity. Okay, this tonsil, it has a crypts. Okay, tonsillar crypts. The most prominent and larger crypts is known as a crypta magna. Okay, palatine tonsil, commonly known as a tonsils. Okay, it forms the lateral part of the Waldeus ring. See, it forms the lateral part of the Waldeus ring. It is located within the tonsillar bed. This is the tonsillar bed. Okay, and it is bounded anteriorly by a palatoglossal. Palato means a palate. Okay, this palate, glossal, it means tongue. Okay, it is bounded anteriorly by a tongue and a palate, known as a palatoglossal arch. Then posteriorly it is bounded by a palatopharyngeal arch. Okay, palate means palato, pharyngeals means pharynx. It is free at the medial surface because no capsules covered at the medial surface of the palatine tonsil, whereas at the lateral surface it is covered by a fibrous connective tissue, that is a capsule. Okay, this is a histology picture of the tonsils. These space are the crypts. Okay, these are the crypts. Okay, and these are the capsule, and these are the lymphatic nodules. Okay, in between these lymphatic nodules, the capsule will extend a connective tissue. These are the trabeculae. Okay, trabeculae. The vessels which are present in the trabeculae is known as trabecular blood vessels. No capsule covered on the medial wall of the palatine tonsils. Okay, no capsule. You see, there is no capsule in the medial wall of the medial surface of the palatine tonsil, whereas, but instead it has a crypts, right? It has a crypts. In the lateral wall, lateral surface of the palatine tonsil, it is covered by a capsule, right? Invaginated by deep grooves. These grooves in the medial surface of the palatine tonsil is known as a tonsillar crypts. Okay, these are the grooves. Okay, it invaginate inside like this one. You see, this is started invagination. Like this one, the epithelium will invaginate inside and form as a groove, and this groove known as a tonsillar crypt. The epithelium, we have no capsule, but we have an epithelium on the medial side. Okay, the epithelium which line the palatine tonsil is a stratified squamous non-keratinized epithelium. Okay, this epithelium also present in the oral cavity, in the pharyngeal cavity, and the tonsillar crypts. See, the epithelium it's continuous with the tonsillar crypts, with the oral cavity and pharyngeal and the tonsillar crypts. Below the epithelium, the lymphatic nodules distributed along the length of the tonsillar crypts. Below the epithelium, the lymphatic nodules, these lymphatic nodules are distributed, okay, along the length of the tonsillar crypts. Lymphatic nodules frequently merge with each other and exhibit lightning-stained germinal center. This lymphatic nodules, germinal center of the lymphatic nodules of the palatine tonsil. Okay, and then a dense connective tissue underlies the palatine is a capsule. This is a capsule. Okay, a capsule which covers the lateral surface of the palatine tonsil. A connective tissue arises from the capsule, passes towards the surface of the tonsil between the lymphatic nodules. These are the trabeculae. You see, this is a connective tissue extending from the capsule towards the lymphatic, in between the lymphatic nodules. These are the trabeculae. Inside the trabeculae, we have some small blood vessels. These are the trabecular blood vessels. That's all for today's class. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am.